So we did a lot of research and went on several exploratory trips to Sierra Leone before moving our family here to teach the gospel a year ago. However, the one thing we weren't able to experience for ourselves before moving here was the rainy season. And so after surviving our first one, these are our impressions. So before we share our impressions regarding the rainy season, just a little bit of a background that here in West Africa, specifically obviously here in Sierra Leone, the heat and really the brunt of the rainy season is typically within the July, August, September months. Obviously you're going to have a fair bit of rain after that and before, but that's kind of the central peak of the intensity of the rainy season. And so that's something that we had not experienced before, and we're just wrapping up now our first rainy season, and we survived. Sonia, what are some of your impressions regarding the rainy season? What are things of it that you liked, and what things you didn't like? What are just your general thoughts?
For me, by far, this has already been a subject of much discussion, is the heat is significantly less during the rainy season. So there were some days where in the mornings, like, we would have multiple cups of hot coffee and tea because it was so pleasant outside, and nearly all day during the brunt of the rainy season, all day long, was really pleasant and cool.
Yeah, and when she says pleasant and cool, she means like a high of 80. And so obviously not very cold, but cold compared to what we're used to during the dry season, which usually gets up to the high 90s, and even the low 100s. And so comparatively speaking, we just absolutely loved the cooler temperature and the break from the heat. Even having the overcast clouds made it so much easier to do our chores and to run errands and things like that. Right. And so it was refreshing. Like, it was giddy. Like, I think often it's, for some people, they struggle with like getting depressed without, having sunlight and going consecutive days with being overcast. I think it had the opposite effect on us, where whenever we looked outside in the morning, it looked like it was gonna be an overcast day. It lifted our spirits, and it was such an enriching and kind of joyful thing. I also think the rainy season kind of highlighted some of our either cultural but temperamental differences from the locals. Like, there were times when it would be raining and a local would come with me back home after a Bible study, and they'd enter the gate and like all the girls were just like dancing in the rain, just like playing in the rain, and that was just something they weren't used to. I'm quite shocked by that. Also, Epaphra, being a newborn during the beginning of the rainy season, we would often just put her in a diaper and have no clothes on her just because she was naturally hot and she was sweating. But the Africans were just, whenever they would see her, they would just be concerned that we were not giving her proper care because she has to be cold. And then we remembered that every time we've seen a newborn in Sierra Leone, even during the hot season, but especially during the rainy season, like, they're bundled up, they have like hats on and winter coats and blankets swaddled around them. And so it took them a while to trust us that we were able to take care of our daughter and not just let her freeze to death. So it definitely highlighted some differences there, which was funny to talk about and to experience. So what would you say were some of the cons or the challenges that we experienced during the rainy season, at least for you?
I think probably the biggest con of the rainy season is that it takes forever for clothes to dry. And so sometimes I would do laundry and hang it out to dry, and it would be 3 days before it was completely dry. And there were some things that were just the material, like, they just would not dry. And then sometimes we'd be trying to like run them out. So if the sun came out for a little bit, we would hang them outside, and then we would take them back inside so they're covered when the rain came. And so it just took a long time for clothes to dry.
Yeah, there are a lot of like humorous occasions whenever the storm clouds would get really dark and the wind would start blowing. We'd be out here just scrambling to be able to collect all the stuff all from the clothesline, as well as some of the things from the gazebo and the veranda and different places. And so that was definitely a challenge. I don't know. I'm not sure what category to put this in, because this brought a lot of joy to our lives. Just seeing each other like slip and fall all the time. Just slipping and falling. Sonia was probably the most frequent one that got a wet bottom from falling down on the tile. Tiles everywhere here, and of course, tile's slippery, and so that was pretty frequent, just seeing people just fall down all the time. And so thankfully no serious injuries, no significant injuries from all of that. So as far as the challenges and maybe some of the cons that I saw, my schedule was a lot more dependent upon being able to leave the house, as far as having all my different Bible studies and Bible classes that I have throughout the week. There'd be mornings or evenings or days where I had 3, 4 Bible studies, 5 Bible studies that day, and it would be a big question mark whether or not I could actually be able to have all of them because of just the intense rain. And so if it's light rain, that does not prevent transportation, but it is so heavy where no one is on the roads. And so that's something that obviously we looked at what the locals did and how they responded and what type of weather they said, no, it's not worth it to go out in this. And this kind of followed suit when possible. And so what that meant is oftentimes I have a study that's 20 minutes away, and 10 minutes into it, the rain would just pour down, just cats and dogs, just super intense. And so you just pull off and you get underneath the tree and you try to hide from the rain as much as you can until it dies down a little bit, and then you get back on your bike and make it 5-6 minutes, and then it pour down again and you pull off. And so it was a bit of an adventure every time you go out because you weren't sure how long it'd take you to get there. But also, everyone had a really patient attitude regarding those studies. Everyone knows that, if it's raining, you're going to be late, And so it just kind of, sometimes I'd show up an hour late because it took me a while longer to get there. So another challenge of the rainy season is that even when it's not raining, a lot of the roads are just in terrible condition because to get to most of my studies, a lot of them are on dirt roads and up hills and around valleys and swamps and things like that. And so every single time it rains, the road would change because of the different, divots and the different trenches that the water would just naturally produce over that past rainstorm. And so during the dry season, even some of these roads that are terrible condition, I always remembered the rut being on the left, so I drive on the right, and then I cross this rut in order to prevent being, pulled off the road on this side. But every single time during the rainy season, the road is completely transformed. And so it really took a lot of work to be able to navigate the roads and even try to find different paths to get to places and get to people because of how drastically the rains affected the condition of the roads in a negative way. And so because of some of these transportation challenges during the rainy season, I think our community kind of becomes a little bit smaller during those months because transportation outside of a farther range an area, it becomes more difficult, more challenging. And so you find yourself spending more and more time with your closer, in proximity neighbors and community members. And so a lot more time with neighbors, a lot more time within the mile or 2 mile kind of radius around your house. And that really proved to be a huge blessing for us since we prioritized a location that was fairly close to a lot of the Christians and of the church here. And so it was really a huge blessing even during the rains, feeling like we were close enough that even if it was a downpour, we could walk back and not be interfered with, or that we could kind of find a gap in the rain sometimes to visit some of the Christians.
I think my favorite part of the rainy season was that it kind of was able to become a time of introspection and reflection for our family. We were spending more time inside, spending more time together, spending more time, talking and reading and laughing. And I think all those things produce closeness, and we were able to develop, certain habits with things. And so I think that's a huge blessing of being in some ways trapped inside when you're able to turn it into something that can be good for your family.
Yeah, so obviously there's a negative way of viewing some of the natural hindrances that weather and other things bring. And, I think more so than anywhere that I've lived, our lives are dependent upon the weather, especially during the rainy season. And so it's obviously possible to have a negative attitude about that, but I think there definitely are advantages and blessings to be able to make the most of a situation where maybe you're limited in where you can go. It just goes to show that really any circumstantial factor can turn out for good or for bad, or positive or negative, depending upon how you look at it and how you see it. But even having those different seasons is a blessing to be able to acknowledge and thank God for. All right, well, that's just a little bit of information regarding our brand new experience during the rainy season. I'm sure in the future years we'll have more to share and more stories to be able to tell you guys, but that'll be it for now. Catch you next time. Bye.